The Borg are a horrifying concept when you delve into it. The idea that you can be forcibly assimilated into a hive mind, be conscious of it all and unable to resist, is combined with body horror elements to form a truly invasive and terrible threat. But thanks to the alternate universes introduced in Star Trek Online, we've witnessed several other variations, like the Borg Kingdom of the Terran universe, and now the topic of this video, that is arguably the most messed up Borg variant we have come across, the Chimerans. So in this video I'm occasionally going to mention things like psionics, which covers things like psychic powers. While sounding mystical in Star Trek, such abilities are rather common and vary in intensity, but most have a science fiction explanation behind them. Biochemical transmitters, minds that can emit certain energy patterns or manipulate subspace effects, or even organic glands that can emulate communication feats like sending and receiving certain wavelengths. So when I say that the Trill symbionts have a level of psionics to them, this is what I am referring to. While the symbionts commune through electrical impulses, their connection to their hosts and others includes such mild psionic effects. This will be important later. In one timeline, Ezri Tegan retired from Starfleet before the Dominion War ended, leading to her never receiving the symbiont and returning home. It's unclear if this is the point of divergence or one of several, but when a renewed Borg offensive came in 2409, she was not present to defend the Federation Vega colony. Thanks to her absence from this fight, and possibly other variations, the Borg were not contained to this one world and managed to claim a foothold in Federation space. Over the next year they began to spread as Starfleet entered a full-scale war against them. Meanwhile, Trill saw the arrival of Dr. Julian Bashir among others, who, pushed by desperation to find a way to deal with the Borg advance, raised the radical idea of weaponizing select joined Trill, hosts who had centuries of combat experience to offer and potentially find a way to use the latent symbiont psionic connection to maybe even share this knowledge. Of course, this would come with a healthy sideboard of genetic and technological augmentations to create these super soldiers. Protomatter would act as the catalyst and support these changes. The mutable particle had already proved its ability to rewrite matter, both organic and not, with projects like Genesis in the past. Naturally, this radical idea was nixed in the bud when it was proposed. But over time, things grew worse for the Federation. Eventually, the Symbiosis Commission relented to some small experiments with volunteers, and results were promising. One of the aims was to make them immune to assimilation, alongside outfitting them for combat and amplifying the symbionts' connection to one another. It worked. However, Trill resistance protests grew, and numerous factions began to arise that opposed the government's plans to weaponize the symbionts. The experiments continued as Trill verged on a civil war, but then the worst came. The Borg made it to Earth and destroyed the seat of Federation power. With so few resources left, the Trill government now turned to this project, going all in to form its own defence against the Borg collective, aware that so far they had only been spared as the Borg had focused on the core worlds of the UFP. Now the drones would be coming for them. However, when the project went into full swing, something went wrong. Exactly what it is unclear, but the selected hosts, the Jean Resi, went insane. Speculation is that the pain and trauma of the symbionts created a feedback in their psionic connection. This drove the hosts insane too, and dosed up with protomatter and augmented bodies, they turned hostile against anything not them. Their minds were overwhelmed with the need to eat, kill, join, and base ferocious impulses spurred on by instability and pain. Not long after, the Borg finally broke through the defences of Trill, and with no Starfleet left to back them up, the planet instigated a full evacuation. But it was too little, too late, and only a handful of survivors made it off the planet. Meanwhile, the Janresi continued to attack anything not them, and when the collective descended, they saw the lethality in the cyborg-joined Trill, so they did what they always do. They attempted to add their biological and technological distinctiveness to their own, which was the worst thing they could have done. While the Janresi were not immune to assimilation entirely, the process was incomplete, and on top of this, the psionic network of their own was incompatible with the Borg's. The more they took in, the more the effect compounded, and soon it reached a breaking point. The wild, feral minds of the mutilated Trill overwhelmed the structured order of the hive mind. Chaos swept over order, disrupting it and warping the orders of the collective. Within hours, it had spread through the network, and while it's unclear what happened to the Borg Queen, it seems that she too was overwhelmed and her psyche shattered. The directives to assimilate, perfect and learn clashed with the primal urges to destroy and feast, and with a guttural cry, the chief motivation warped into consume. Consume without thought for consequence or moderation, while only the background fragments of the Borg's order keeping them from entirely falling apart. This perversion warped not only the hive mind of the Borg, but the physicality of those connected. New assimilations were haphazard, conversions were not uniform, randomized, splicing pieces of others onto existing drones, reformatting flesh and steel into monstrous abominations. The protomatter that made up the biological fusion of the Janresi amplified this effect, allowing for the creation and replication of organic matter alongside the nanotech of the collective, and it spread faster than anything seen before. From this mashing together of different species, the name Chimerans was derived. So, let's take a look at the variations that existed, for even amid the chaos there is some constancy, some remnant from Borg structure. Firstly, we have the assimilated drones. Not so different from regular drones, these however included organic webbing alongside the technology, and we have a distinctly different look to them. Some have weapons, many just resort to psychotic melee attacks. Few have active Borg shields anymore. Perhaps it's too complicated to replicate with the brute force approach of the Chimeran assimilation. Each has a connection to the hive mind, but with how fractured their collective is, some simply fail to connect and remain dormant, forgotten by the hive mind or overwhelmed by the insanity and shut down. Those that are active seek only to spread their infection. The convulsing and jittery movements combine with the methodical Borg approach at times, showing the conflicting and faulty assimilation process used. When the Chimerans invade, their protomatter-fueled advance is seen as a creeping corruption of tendrils, cables and flesh, replicating itself across any available surface. This forms into random anatomical structures without guidance, but occasionally a gestating pustule will be created. These use Borg and protomatter to form symbiont larvae, which can then be used to form more Chimerans. These crawlers appear to be assimilated Ceti Alpha eels, the creatures that can spawn more larvae that Khan found. Which then leads us to the first proper Chimerans. These are the closest form to the original Janresi. The symbiont is there for all to see, grafted onto the ribcage of the host, which loses its head, and metal shards, synthetic legs, and all manner of cyborg formations erupt from the body. Does it make sense to have the symbiont on such display? No, but very little about these creatures is logical anymore. Patchy hair, bone and growths emerge at irregular intervals, while protomatter-fueled energy burns within its chest. Lacerating metal talons emerge, and the Chimeran is ready to attack, while the mind is overwhelmed by the feral commands of the psionic collective. These Chimerans can climb, walk on all fours or two limbs, and have bursts of speed. They also regenerate spontaneously, coming back from the dead if not enough damage was sustained, only continue their reckless advance. Then there are the Gorgers. These look like dinosaurs in their form, or at least some lizard-like alien, but if you look at their components, they are fashioned from humanoid parts. Hands dangle limply from the front, while the skull is clearly not reptilian but has been stripped of all flesh. And a large tail acts as a counterbalance and a weapon too. And these larger creatures do have Borg adaptive shielding. There are two potential ways that these are formed, and both are equally morbid. Either they are a conglomeration of parts hacked together like Frankenstein's monster, or they were each originally a person, so heavily warped by assimilation gone wrong that this is the result. One of the first species the Chimerans managed to assimilate when they came to the online timeline was the Zenkethi. So another witnessed form was the Glutton. These towering creatures still had the musculature form of the lumbering creatures, but their weaponry, exosuits and heavy cannons favoured by the Zenkethi military are now erupting from their very body, as their flesh is hollowed out and replaced with cybernetics and a symbiont grafted into their chest. Then we have the Devourer. This creature has a humanoid skull atop an otherwise insect-like body, or perhaps even a Tholian form. 6 legs support it, while metal juts from its spine like the remembrance of wings. Its 2 arms end in weaponry that can impart protomatter-laced nanites, leading to conversion of the struck into a Chimeran. Skin clings to otherwise metallic coils of musculature, and a furnace-like glow emanates from its ribcage. There are even reports of the occasional Apex, a Chimeran where the random assortment of applied augmentations results in a near impervious and brutish abomination. Very little forethought is given to the longevity or function of these creations, as evidenced by the fact that there are so many discarded failures. Which brings me to their ships. The majority of the Chimeran ships are converted Borg vessels. However, with the hive mind's coding perverted, the vessels have grown and reconfigured themselves into mockeries of the Borg's order. All of their ships, from the Scouts to the Spheres and Cubes, are there to be identified but now stretched and distorted with asymmetrical growths. Organic mounds erupt from between the metal plates while tendrils bind it all together. Their new forms all sport long tails, however, as if on some level the minds of the Trill symbionts are trying to replicate a form that they are familiar with in their ships. Within a year, the universe in which they originated lost the Alpha and Beta quadrants to this plague, and malformed unicomplexes span sectors. So that covers this most invasive and horrific Borg variation that I have come across so far. The Chimerans take the assimilation of the Borg and remove all sanity and order from it, engaging only in slaughter and consumption with reckless abandon. Taking something like the generally benign symbionts of the Trill and turning them into this seems even more taboo, and the only mildly silver lining is that if you were converted into a Chimeran, you would probably at least be insane, or just deactivate immediately, being overwhelmed. So at least you'd not exactly be conscious to experience life as a drone. From their aesthetic to their acts, the corruptive spread of the Chimerans is something that even the Borg of other universes are worried about, considering any attempts to connect and impose order over them leads to the joining mind being shattered too. Thanks for watching this breakdown of the Borg of the Chimeran universe. Until the next one, I've been Rick. Stay safe, and goodbye.